chewing on a piece of grass, walking down the road. Tell me, how long you gonna stay here, Joe?
Hello. It's been a while. This is Rapture Remembered, and I just wanted to talk about, a little typical experience that I had today. I don't really need the other guys in this one, so I just want to, relaxingly bring this set of observations to you. And this will be a bit black pilly. It has to do with, I took my dog to the park, right? Normally, I don't really take him to the park because usually, the family will just take him around the block or something. But I kind of got a little time where it's just he and I, and I figured, it'd be nice to, since I don't have to go into work for a little bit, to be able to, bring him out and also get myself out and be able to do stuff that I haven't been able to do for years, which is walk in nature. Now, yes, technically I could do this, but, I get up at like 5:30 every morning, usually at least 6 days of the week, and I'm not done. I'm not ready to. Sometimes I get a little free time in the afternoon, and I get a little free time in the morning, and then I'll also, if I want to dig into my sleep, I'll stay up a little later, like after 9 or something, and so I'm not getting that much rest, and it's been like this for years. And so finding the energy to go to the park and just do normal things, it's become more difficult. So fortunately I have this break, and although I'm not with my family, which saddens me greatly, I am able to do some things. And so going to the park I thought would be great, and it was great. It was a beautiful day. Keep in mind, here in Florida, so it's a little bit warmer. I think it got up to 80. And it was one of those rare perfect days here in Florida, because I don't count the sunnier ones, like the hotter ones. Basically, for me to think the weather's perfect here, it can't be blazing hot, so it really can't get much above 80. And it has to have kind of cloud cover to some degree, or the sun will just be too intense for my skin. And yeah. So anyway, it was a nice, and also had a light breeze, so it had everything. And I went to this park where it's not the most interesting park, but you can walk for miles through basically nature on a paved path. And they have some unpaved paths that you can also divert off of, or onto, off the main path. And I don't really do that with my dog, though, because his feet and stuff will get so dirty. I just didn't want to go there, so I stuck to the main path. Anyway, it's probably all seeming very boring right now, but I'll get to some points here. So I'm enjoying this beautiful day, and the opening song to this rant, Ventura Highway by America, I believe they came out with that song in the late 70s. It was just going through my head the whole time. I have this lust for old Americana, and although Black Pilled says that he hates the 70s, I just saw him tweet the other day that he thinks the 70s were like a gross era where all pictures you look at just look disgusting. I get where he's coming from. I mean, it was kind of, but you have to understand, dirty was kind of the thing. It's like everyone looked kind of unwashed in the 70s. It was almost worse than the late 60s in that regard. But there was a certain art to it. And definitely the light rock scene started to come in in the 70s. I think the most typical group would be the Eagles. Now, I'm not a huge Eagles fan, but I don't think they're that bad either. I think it's just they got overplayed in the 90s when they did that reunion Hell Freezes Over tour. But, and you know how we are in the 90s. We tend to hate everything that could possibly be mainstream. So even to this day, I can't say I like Nirvana. I mean, Nirvana's okay. But I appreciate, what they brought, but they were just too popular for me to be into. So anyway, the 70s had all this light rock stuff, and it just felt so genuinely American, at least to me. The thing is, someone like Black Pilder, I don't know too much about him, but certainly some of the the Tradcaths or the Reactionaries and whatnot, they would totally try to deconstruct the 70s, to just take the beauty of it and just take it apart. And I think that's a mistake. I think if there's something great about a pop culture, that it can be good on its own. It doesn't need to be deconstructed into some kind of Jewish music mogul conspiracy to degenerate the Western man. I mean, sure, there are elements of that, to a large degree, no doubt. But at the same time, don't allow yourself to just be deprived of everything because you're deconstructing everything. Don't give into the culture of critique in that sense, in the sense that you're robbing yourself of, beauty that you can appreciate. Anyway, so I have this lately I've had this total nostalgia. Maybe I'm misusing that term, I don't know, but this love for basically early 80s, 70s kind of stuff, where it was that ugly, unwashed America, but it had like folk rock, and it was just beautiful. Like you felt like it was still our country, and every day is sunny, and it's like everything you wore was vintage somehow, even though it must have been new at some point. Maybe it's because these people slept in their clothes or something on the street. I don't know. But, I got into not only America, but Peter Frampton, Meatloaf, just some real kind of, I know Frampton's English, but he definitely had an American vibe too, or an appeal to America in his Peter Frampton Comes Alive album. And all this stuff. I love cruising in the Jeep listening to this stuff, and I can pretend for a moment that it's still my country and that we're still on an upward trajectory. And I don't know. Perhaps I'm clinging to that stuff for bad reasons, but regardless, I was walking through the park with my dog, and it felt like I was finally doing what we're all supposed to do. I was walking down the road chewing on a piece of grass on Ventura Highway, right? It was just so beautiful. I looked out and I'd see fields. It's more like extended marshland, where the reeds have grown up, and you just look out and you'll see birds. I saw some crazy things today. I saw, well, not only eastern bluebirds, you can look them up, they're pretty colorful, some woodpeckers and whatnot, but I did see 2 giant boar, which were kind of, honestly, I had to get out of there because these things were freaking massive, and I don't know what they were doing there, but they were kind of off in the woods, and I got my dog safely out of there and reported it to the rangers, because this is still somewhat an urban area, and children, people on bicycles, all these types go walking through. These were definitely capable of goring people. So anyway, that's kind of an aside, but it was really beautiful and relaxed, and I was just taking it in. But this is where it gets to what I wanted to talk about. you can try to escape. You can try to find some kind of time capsule to crawl into, a reverse time capsule, what have you. Some DeLorean with a flux capacitor. But the truth is going to catch up to you no matter where you are these days. I mean, it first hit me today. I was walking and I stopped with my dog along one of the trailheads, like one of the paths going out that doesn't have that's not paved. And I've been on that trail a lot of times, but I just stopped with my dog around there to let him rest because he's not that big of a dog. He's my parents gave us him, so I'd prefer like a German Shepherd or something, but whatever. He's a good guy, so I was letting him rest there for a second, and out of the woods from this path emerges a couple. And so my first instinct was like, okay, oh yeah, a young couple, walking through the woods, great, maybe they're making out back there or whatever. But then I noticed that I noticed the demographics, and it was a beautiful white girl, probably like 20 or something, tall, lithe, wearing like yoga leggings or whatever, and beautiful girl. I think she had like auburn hair pulled up, and she's side by side with this black guy who, I mean, I'm not going to criticize or critique his looks. I mean, he was pretty unremarkable. And all of a sudden, like, what could have been a nice white couple coming out of the woods, probably walking on a trail together, just getting out into nature, taking pictures of one another, smiling, leaning against trees or something, all of a sudden it becomes something much different. And I must say, an odor followed them, and it was incredibly strong. It was marijuana, weed, what have you. So they were hitting that stuff hard, because I wasn't even close to them. I was like, 20 yards away or something, and it just was overpowering when they came out of that trailhead. And this guy's no good. He has tattoos going up his arm and stuff. But the white girl didn't seem like bad news. She seemed like she could have just been any next door neighbor white girl. And she's with this guy in the woods. And I mean, I suppose maybe they were just enjoying nature, right? I don't want to take that away from them. But then you start to assume the worst. You start to assume, well, first of all, they're at least smoking, they're at least getting doped up or whatever. And they're probably doing other things back there. And when it comes to this kind of couple, you assume the things are less and less pure. And I think it's a pretty safe assumption. So who knows what was going on back there? Probably some, what do they call the like exhibitionist kind of stuff? Who knows? Anyway, they were kind of surprised to see me, and I was kind of surprised to see them. I just stayed with my dog and let them rest, and they started, stumbling onward down the path and the direction I had to go. So I had to like follow them in a couple minutes, and fortunately they found another trailhead and went into that. And I'm like, Jesus, I just come out here to get away from that shit, I just try to get away. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see our young women just being whored out to these inner city thugs. It's disgusting. And there's no other take to have about it. There's nothing good about this at all. I'm going to sip on my coffee. I forgot I made some coffee. It's late, but because I don't have to wake up at any certain time for the next couple of weeks, I'm just like, fuck it, I'll make coffee at night. Pardon the language. So I'm just like, I'm not going to let an encounter like that ruin this awesome afternoon. And so me and the little guy, we continue on the trail, and it was beautiful, and we went out a couple miles at least. He can't go very far, so otherwise I probably would have walked like 10 or 12 miles. or at least 8, maybe 10 or 12 is a bit excessive to just casually throw out there. But definitely, I probably would have walked a long ways if I didn't bring him along. But it was nice, too, to have the company, I suppose. So, on my way back, around the same spot, guess who comes meandering out of the woods? It's them again, and they've been in there for like an hour. I mean, I don't know, maybe they did the full trail, I guess. Uh, you could come up with any kind of assumptions as to what they were doing in there. Uh, and I don't want to seem paranoid either. I mean, maybe they were just enjoying nature. But I want to stress this again. When you see these kind of couples, you don't have those kids, those crazy kids, I wish them the best. No, you don't feel that toward these people. You don't. Because you see the destruction. You see that, like, this girl can never be what she once was at some point. She can never be pure like that again. She's with Deshawn in the woods, smoking marijuana, right? And I know a lot of people listening to this will probably have various stances on weed. It's one of these hills that I don't really care to die on, but needless to say, I'm not crazy about it. I think it says a lot about, quite frankly, class and priorities and things like that. But, I've met some great freaking people who, for some reason, they love doing it, so I don't want to toss those people. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush on the subject, but, yeah. Anyway, they come out in front of me again, and I actually, at that point, I stop with my dog again and rest him so I can give them some space, and then, after a couple minutes, I continue on. I'm like, okay, well, good. They're finally out of sight. But they had also stopped further down. And then I got up to them and they stood up and then walked out in front of me again. And I'm just like, get the fuck away from me. I know they don't, they didn't do anything wrong, right? Well, they did in our books, right? But in terms of their immediate, and I mean immediate behavior, there's nothing wrong with them taking a little rest. But yeah, they were in front of me for half this day, unfortunately, and I passed a ranger, and I waved to him, and he was looking at my little dog, and then I hear someone shout from a ways off that they're coming up from behind, and there's this like big black guy on a bicycle like whizzing along, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, but you got these people on bicycles, and they think the world needs to revolve around their speed, right? Like, don't impinge on their speed. Don't tread on their speed. How dare you try to walk your dog peacefully in nature, because they're coming through fast. And anyway, I was already in a bad mood, so I gave this guy a mean stare, and he was kind of caught off guard. But whatever, obviously he was out of there pretty soon anyway because of his speed, and he continued on. I mean, I guess, fine, he's given us a warning, but I don't like being fucking shouted at by a black dude on a bike when I'm just trying to like be out in nature. But these are the encounters that you have. It's just one after the other. So finally, I get to the split off where to get back to my car, I go one way, and thankfully they went the other, this couple. And I'm walking through the woods, and before I get to where the cars are parked, there's another couple. And I can see that, they're acting silly. It's another young couple. This one's probably like in their mid-20s, I guess. And I look and I see this, 25-year-old-ish, maybe she's younger, I don't know, just beautiful white brunette girl, and she's like, for some reason she's being silly and climbing on the children's playground or something and laughing, and I'm like, okay, whatever, young kids, crazy young kids, I wish them the best. And then the guy who's like trying to take pictures of her while she does this turns around, and it's another Deshawn, it's another black dude. And I mean, this is another girl that's like, I hate using the number scale because I feel like that just gives into, some of the worst elements in the manosphere or whatever. I don't want to sound like a white knight or whatever, but I don't really like. I don't. It's fine if some people want to categorize women by a number or whatever, and I have done this a lot of times, I admit, but I don't like it being done about our women. I don't want to reduce them like that. At least not because if I reduce them like that, I'm not saying that if you're in the locker room with the guys, you can't have locker room talk, right? No, that's cool, but I'm not going to say, hey, Deshaun, check Stacy out. She's a 9 out of 10. You should go and you should hit that, right? I'm not going to freaking objectify our women for other men to come and defile. But she was pretty gorgeous, just like the other girl, and she's with a Deshaun, and they're in the park. And there were only 2 other couples I saw that day, or today, I guess. One was a young Latino couple, and they were relatively healthy and doing their own thing, and the other couple was like kind of mixed race Asian kind of couple, and I couldn't really tell what they were. Kind of a Meramut kind. Well, I say a Meramut, but they're not even like the old school type of a Meramuts like me. Like these were like mixed race people, and I can't identify them. And they were sitting down having a picnic. And so this is my reality, right? I go outside. This is what I see. I see 2 couples who are of an out group, flat out, being somewhat normal, and then I see 2 other couples with black thugs and 2 beautiful white women, and they're both kind of up to no good. The one couple's like being stupid on a children's playground, taking Instagram selfies, and the other one is like doing dope and having sex in the woods. And I just have that. I'm trying to just get back to Ventura Highway, right? It's you and your dog, and you're just walking through America. But I think that's what if you listen to a song like Ventura Highway, it's so reminiscent of a country that was ours for us. You could walk down endless highways to explore. They weren't bumper to bumper, filled up everywhere you went. Like all the fields weren't fenced off for stupid laws about like, if you come onto my land and then trip and break your ankle or something, or if you drown yourself in a pond on my property, then you can sue me, so I'm just going to fence everything off and you won't be able to walk anywhere. Like that's modern America, where that beauty from previous decades, it's just it really feels gone in almost every capacity. I try to remember what it was like, and I only have vague memories from when I was a kid in the 80s and a teen in the 90s, and by the 90s late 90s things were starting to decline. But to think that this was our land, and I know the Native Americans had to go through a lot of loss way back when. But what's the argument? Like the process should continue. The process of dispossession should just continue horrifically, unendingly. First the Native Americans, quote unquote, now us, and whoever came before the Native Americans, might I add. You can't look to people who want to displace you, who want to take your land, and just say you don't have any kind of rights. You can't have a good faith argument with these people. To do so it's a fool's errand. Like, you can't talk to these people. There's nothing to talk about at this point. All there is how are we going to organize? How are we going to effectively apply force, whether it's actual force, which of course would require quite a paradigm shift, or political force, or whatever, just activism, what have you. The conversation, I've said this before on my channel, the only conversation to have is one amongst ourselves. There can be no conversation with people outside of our group, and by our group I mean our race. I'm not going to dance around it. I'm not going to optics cuck. Because I don't really buy into that supporting your race is bad optics. I mean, if you yield that, then you've already lost the argument. You've already lost the debate. No, where the conversation starts is you have a right to exist. Like some of our better speakers have said, you have to ask, who am I? And once you realize who you are, you realize that you are entitled to an inheritance. And you realize that, like, what's happening to your inheritance. And your inheritance is a mixed race couple coming out of the woods reeking of marijuana after probably filming some self-porn or something. You're gonna raise a daughter for 18 plus years to have that be where she ends up, sauntering out of the woods reeking of weed with Deshaun. It's heartbreaking to think that, I've seen 2 examples of this just today. And I'm trying to get away from people, by the way. It's not like I'm going there to be with people. I'm going there to see, like, literally no one, because these are trails that aren't taken as much, and it's kind of a good way to get away from people. But it doesn't matter. Like I said, it follows you. Especially the closer to the parking lot you get, because these people tend to not go that far on foot, at least. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that promise of America as being ours, I feel like it's so close to being gone. And it only exists because the people we're against, they can't physically destroy the land, or at least not quickly. The powers that be are trying to infinitely expand urbanization around all town centers to the point where there won't be really anything left. But I mean, there are still these, skeletons of the land, of, rural areas that haven't been overrun or expanded into. But it feels like it's almost gone, and that if you want to have those good feels of walking down the road, sunny day in your country, waiting to get to that little town filled with your folk, like, that's just going to have to be a fantasy in your head. That's just going to have to be a song from the 70s playing on your car radio. I want it back. I want this stuff back for our people. And we often say that we don't hate the people that are coming to this country, or the people that a long time ago were brought over here as slaves, or we don't hate them. They're just taking advantage of opportunity or whatever. But I mean, really, at some point you do have to acknowledge them as the enemy, even if you have to do so reluctantly, because they want a piece of what's yours. They want to have lots of children. They want to expand. And when they expand, that, what that means? That means taking your shit, okay? When they have 4 or 5 children, they're taking your shit. To put it crudely, to use their language. So we have many enemies. We have enemies in many forms. Some of them are seemingly innocent, whether it be East Asians who come, well, I won't say about the Wuhan people, but, people who are just here just to work and make money and they don't really want to cause any problem. Well, guess what? They are causing a problem. And whether they know it or not, whether their intentions are good or bad, they're here trying to take our stuff. And even though there are much more wicked, sinister types who have brought them here and made it easy for them to come here and take what is ours. And certainly those people making those decisions, they're the truest of enemies. But we also have enemies at a low rank, at a low level, who are inadvertently or unconsciously hurting us. Every time you go outside and you hear people jabbering and Hindu or God knows Farsi or whatever freaking languages, I don't even know the languages I hear each day. I mean, they could be anything. Who else did I see today at the park? I did see, there's a group of Muslims in hijabs getting there, unloading out of the car, like when I was leaving. Just an afterthought, really. But yeah, I mean, there's no escape from this stuff, at least not where I am, and soon not to be where everyone else is. I mean, it's the week of just the other day was the Iowa caucuses, and God knows what these people are thinking there. I'm from a place not too dissimilar from Iowa. And I can tell you, these people don't know what's coming. They do not know what's coming. And I'm sure it's already upon them to a small degree. They tend to first see it as more blacks come up from other parts of from where I grew up in the Midwest, the blacks were always, you knew they were kind of maybe in the inner city or on the other side of the city, but as I got older, they started to encroach on the whiter side of the city, and you're just like, okay, you just see more and more of them. And then you also saw a lot more East Asians once you started to get old enough for college and stuff and went out to college, and of course they just flood the universities, and so you'd see a ton of Asians, a ton more blacks. The Latinos were increasing, but they kind of hid under the radar. They would kind of, you would see them in the back kitchens at McDonald's or, just like cashing checks at check cashing places and stuff. You don't really know where they were hiding, but they were on the increase too. But nonetheless, you felt relatively safe. You felt confident that your people were the super majority, and nothing was going to compromise that. I'll tell you, look at a lot of the rest of America, and it's simply not the case. We're losing big time, and you don't need me to tell you that. So I'm going to try to wrap this up, but I just wanted to reiterate what my main point was, which was I was kind of hearkening back to the 70s, the 1970s, and just the kind of optimistic, feel-good. It was light rock at the time. There's also disco and punk, but I don't really care much for those things. I think punk was more of, a British thing, and or a big city thing, just like disco was more of a big city New Yorker kind of thing. So for us, it was light rock. Of course, I wasn't an active participant of this, but of course, all the material is there. You look back, you listen to the music, you see the styles, and it it seemed like such a happy place, like maybe unwashed, but to have that sense again that this country is ours, that this land is ours, and maybe you grew up in a small, boring white town, end quote, and you just want to get away, you just want to explore, but at least you had that small white town. At least you had that good upbringing. You had that sense of security. You had those groups of friends who were white. You had teachers who were white. You had doctors who were white. You go into the store and, maybe you know the people there, maybe you don't, but they're white and they're of your folk. Like, all of that's under threat, dire threat everywhere. I want it back. I want it back. So I was just relaying some experiences today. I suppose the one thing they couldn't take away was the weather. The weather was beautiful, and I guess if you're walking alone with your dog, you can still pretend you're someplace better.
You don't care, I know. Ventura Highway in the sunshine, where the days are longer, the nights are stronger than moonshine. You're gonna go, I know. Cause a free wind is blowing through your hair, and the days surround your day.